The Galactic Assembly Chamber was a place of awe and terror for most species. Carved into the core of a neutron star, its swirling energy fields glinted off crystalline walls, and representatives from every corner of the known universe gathered there to deliberate, pass judgment, and settle disputes. For humanity, this chamber represented a chance and a last hope. Earth's representative, Ambassador Liana Armitage, stood at the podium, dwarfed by towering delegates of species far older and more advanced. Her suit, a humble yet dignified design of muted gray and blue, contrasted starkly with the opulent displays of wealth and status favored by others. Around her, murmurs of disdain whispered through the chamber like a venomous wind. Ambassador Armitage, rumbled Crantor Thull, a member of the Assembly's ruling quorum, his serpentine body coiled on a crystalline dais. His multifaceted eyes gleamed with something between amusement and malice. Your species has filed yet another petition for resource aid and territorial protection. Have you considered that your repeated failures might reflect your inability to contribute meaningfully to the galactic order? The laughter that rippled through the chamber was razor-sharp. Humanity, after all, was considered a backwater species. Their entry into the assembly was a bureaucratic fluke, the result of stumbling upon a derelict jump drive in their solar system. They were tolerated, at best, and ignored at worst. And yet here they were again pleading. Liana straightened her shoulders. "Esteemed delegates," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of mockery pressing down on her. "We come not as beggars, but as equals. Our species may lack your centuries of advancement, but we possess ingenuity, determination, and a deep belief in collaboration. We ask not for handouts, but for the opportunity to prove our worth." "Prove your worth," scoffed a delegate from the Zrathic Combine, his chitinous exoskeleton clicking as he leaned forward. "Your species barely survives on a single planet. What could you possibly offer the galaxy?" Liana's lips tightened, but she refused to falter. "We offer ourselves. Humanity has faced extinction countless times, from asteroid impacts to self-inflicted wars, and yet we endure. We adapt. If given the tools, we will not only survive, but thrive. All we ask for is the chance to demonstrate what humanity can bring to the stars." Before anyone could respond, the chamber lights dimmed, and a holographic display flickered to life above the assembly floor. A new figure emerged, its translucent form crackling with static. It was an envoy of the Unthar Dominion, a reclusive empire that rarely deigned to participate in assembly politics. Its voice was like grinding glass. "Your petitions are irrelevant. The Dominion has declared the Sol system a protectorate. Effective immediately, all human activity outside Earth's atmosphere is hereby restricted." Gasps and murmurs erupted, but Liana's heart sank. The Unthar Dominion was the most feared force in the galaxy, their fleets unrivaled in both power and numbers. Their protectorate status was not protection, it was subjugation. Humanity's fledgling colonies and orbital stations would be dismantled, its people confined to their homeworld, their potential forever stifled. "How generous," Crantor Thull sneered, his tone betraying no sympathy. "It seems the matter is settled." "No," Liana said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. The chamber quieted. Her hands clenched the edge of the podium, her knuckles white. "Humanity will not accept this. We reject the protectorate." Laughter exploded once more, but this time it was tinged with incredulity. The Unthar envoy's hologram flickered ominously. "You dare defy the Dominion?" Liana met its glare, her eyes blazing. "We do. Humanity has faced tyrants before, and we have overcome them. If the Assembly will not support us, we will fight alone. But mark my words, we will fight." The chamber erupted into chaos, some delegates shouting, others laughing, and a few watching with quiet curiosity. In the midst of it all, Liana stood her ground unbowed. Later that evening, as she returned to Earth's embassy, her aide, Marcus Voles, looked at her with a mixture of awe and concern. "Do you think they'll make good on their threats?" Liana sighed, her earlier fire giving way to exhaustion. "Undoubtedly. The Dominion will come for us. "And what do we do then?" he asked. She looked out at the distant stars beyond the embassy's viewport, her reflection mingling with their cold light. "We do what we've always done, Marcus. We fight. And we win." The following weeks saw humanity at a crossroads. News of the Unthar Dominion's decrees spread like wildfire through the solar system, igniting panic and anger among Earth's populace. The colonies on Mars, Luna, and the outer asteroid belts began to brace for the worst. Diplomatic efforts failed. The Assembly, predictably, had sided with the Dominion, citing the galaxy's delicate balance and the need for order. Humanity, they said, simply wasn't capable of appending such an entrenched power. But Liana Armitage, emboldened by her public defiance, was not one to fold under pressure. In her office at the Earth Embassy, her team worked around the clock, communicating with military commanders, strategic analysts, and brilliant engineers. She had only one mission: to find a way to defy the odds and fight back. "Ambassador, we have a plan," said Lieutenant Commander Sarah Takeda, a sharp-witted officer who had been working tirelessly on a counter-strategy. She stood across from Liana's desk, a digital blueprint projected between them. "We've begun retrofitting our military ships with an experimental drive system. It's risky, but it could allow us to move undetected through Dominion space. A strike force of smaller ships could slip past their defenses and hit them where they least expect." Liana studied the blueprint, her thoughts racing. "It's bold, but can we trust the technology? We've never tested it in combat conditions." "We won't know unless we try," Takeda replied. "The Unthar Dominion doesn't expect humanity to pose any real threat. That's to our advantage. If we can build a fleet quickly enough and train pilots for guerrilla tactics, we could destabilize their command structures and force them to negotiate." Liana nodded slowly, her mind whirring with possibilities. "And if the plan fails? Then we'll go down fighting," Takeda said with quiet determination. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on Liana's shoulders. She had just proposed a rebellion against the most powerful empire the galaxy had ever known. She would either change the course of history or doom her people to annihilation. The next few days were a blur. Earth's military forces were rallied, alliances were forged with sympathetic groups, and supplies were gathered in secrecy. On the surface, humanity's political leaders still attempted to play nice with the Assembly, but behind closed doors, a storm was brewing. Ships were reprogrammed, weapons were retooled, and the first human resistance fleet took shape, cloaked under a veil of misdirection. "We'll need to be swift," Liana said to her council as they reviewed the final plans. "Once the Dominion catches wind of what we're doing, we lose our advantage. We move fast, we hit hard, and we make sure they never see us coming." The first strike came sooner than anyone had anticipated. A small fleet of stealth-class vessels, human-made but modified with technology scavenged from old alien ships, slipped past the Dominion's outer defenses. The target, a key Unthar supply station located on the fringe of their empire. The operation was daring and brutal in its simplicity: hit fast, disrupt their supply lines, and disappear before retaliation could be mounted. The fleet's leader, Commander Isaac Kor, an experienced veteran with a reputation for being unflappable under pressure, stood on the bridge of the lead ship, Revenant. His crew moved with practiced precision as the stealth system cloaked them from the Dominion sensors. "Everyone stay sharp," Kor's voice echoed through the ship. "We're about to make history." As the fleet entered the Unthar system, the tension was palpable. The Dominion station loomed ahead, its silhouette black against the starry expanse. The attack was swift. Within moments, the stealth fleet unleashed their payloads, decimating the station's primary reactor and rendering their communications array useless. For the first time in centuries, a human strike force had successfully crippled a major Dominion facility. The escape was just as clean. As quickly as they had arrived, the fleet vanished back into the shadows, leaving the Dominion scrambling to respond. The Resistance had delivered its first blow, and for the first time, the galaxy began to see humanity not as a weak, insignificant species, but as something much more dangerous, a species capable of defying the odds and striking fear into the heart of the most powerful empire in the universe. Back on Earth, Lyanna watched the victory unfold in silence, her heart pounding in her chest. The risks were immense, but the success was undeniable. A message had been sent. Humanity was no longer a passive player in the galactic drama. They had defied the odds, and now, they were ready to change the universe. But as she looked out over the darkened skyline of the city below, she knew the road ahead would be far from easy. The Dominion would retaliate, and when they did, they would bring all their might to bear against Earth. It was just the beginning, and the hardest battles were yet to come. The ripple of humanity's first strike sent shockwaves across the galaxy. In the corridors of power, where the fate of thousands of worlds was decided, leaders of the Unthar Dominion seethed in disbelief. How could such an insignificant species, one barely able to protect its own planet, have struck at the heart of their vast empire? In the Dominion's High Command Center, Lord Tharlek stood before a holographic map of the galaxy, his face an expressionless mask. His 6 arms folded across his chest, his dark purple skin shimmering with a bioluminescent glow. Before him stood his closest advisors, including the tactician known only as Vorkith, an elder of the Unthar people who had been in charge of the Dominion's military strategy for over 5 centuries. "Explain to me how this happened," Tharlek growled, his voice like the rumble of distant thunder. Vorkith's 4 eyes blinked slowly, the smallest hint of uncertainty flickering within them. "We miscalculated. Humanity's technology is rudimentary, yes, but they have discovered ways to disrupt our systems. We underestimated their resolve." "Resolve?" Tharlek spat. "This is no mere resolve. This is a declaration of war. We will retaliate, of course," Vorkith said, his tone devoid of emotion. "But their first strike has set us on edge. They are no longer the weak, foolish species we once thought. They have learned to strike with precision and cunning." The Unthar commander turned away from the map, his voice growing colder. "We'll annihilate them, then. I want a full-scale invasion of their system. I want every fleet, every resource we have, aimed at Earth and its colonies. This will be the end of humanity." Back on Earth, Ambassador Lyanna Armitage was facing an even greater challenge. The message was clear, but the war was just beginning. The success of their first strike had rallied people across the galaxy. Secret cells of resistance fighters, many long dormant, began to emerge, ready to stand alongside humanity in the fight for freedom. But with the Dominion now mobilizing every fleet at its disposal, humanity was outmatched. The galaxy's biggest predator was coming to hunt them. Lyanna stood before a holographic projection of the human fleet in Earth's underground military base, a tense silence hanging in the air. Her eyes scanned the ships, new and old, patched together from the wreckage of previous battles and salvaged alien technology. The fleet was still small, far too small for what was coming. "We can't defeat them in open combat," Commander Isaac Kor said, standing beside her. "Not yet. The Dominion has hundreds of ships in their fleets, and each one of those is superior to anything we've got. We need a new approach." Lyanna nodded, her mind racing. She had no illusions about the size of their enemy, but that didn't mean humanity had no chance. "We have one advantage. They underestimate us. The Dominion doesn't believe humanity is capable of coordinated, sustained resistance. If we can keep them guessing, keep them on the back foot, we might just be able to carve out a foothold." "And if they catch us?" Kor asked, his voice laced with the reality of the situation. "We're done." Lyanna's jaw tightened. "Then we go down fighting, but we will make them bleed." The first battle took place in the outer reaches of the solar system. The Unthar fleet, arriving in full force, expected to overwhelm Earth's defenses without resistance. They would hit Earth's weak points, Mars, the asteroid belts, and the orbital colonies, first establishing a foothold and then moving inward. But what the Dominion didn't anticipate was how prepared humanity had become. A ragtag fleet of human resistance ships, under the leadership of Commander Kor, had set up an ambush in the asteroid field. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and far less experienced in deep space warfare, but they fought with a fury that even the Dominion had not seen in millennia. The battle was chaotic. Plasma fire streaked across the void as human ships darted between asteroids, their small but nimble craft taking full advantage of the terrain. Core's command ship, Revenant, darted in and out of enemy fire, evading the larger Dominion vessels. A dozen human ships fell in the first wave, but the Dominion was forced to divert more resources than it had anticipated, slowing their advance. "Target their flagship," Core ordered, his voice sharp as he watched the battlefield unfold. "If we can take out their command ship, we cripple their strategy." But the Dominion was prepared. As the human fleet focused on the flagship, a hidden fleet of Dominion reinforcements appeared from a nearby nebula, overwhelming the Resistance's flank. Ships were torn apart in seconds as the enemy pressed forward with unmatched force. Back at Earth, Liana's heart sank as the data came in. The Resistance had fought valiantly, but the Dominion's sheer might was too much. The battle had been a defeat. But humanity was not done yet. The surviving human ships retreated into the outer system, licking their wounds and regrouping. On Earth, Liana addressed a gathering of Resistance leaders. "This wasn't a loss," she said, her voice resolute. "We've shown the galaxy that we can hurt them. We've shown them that we won't just sit back and let them conquer us." The leaders exchanged uncertain glances. The Dominion would return with even more force, and humanity's survival was more uncertain than ever. But Liana's words struck a chord. The fire she had ignited had spread beyond the military. It was a fire of defiance, a fire of hope. "The galaxy thinks humanity is weak," Liana continued, her gaze unwavering. "But we'll prove them wrong. This is just the beginning." The Resistance had taken its first steps, through blood and fire, against overwhelming odds, but humanity was determined to rise. As the days passed after the defeat in the outer system, the unrelenting pressure from the Unthar Dominion became suffocating. Earth's defenses were barely holding, and humanity's fledgling resistance was on the brink of collapse. The Dominion's retaliatory strikes were swift, brutal, and relentless. Planets were bombarded, colonies dismantled, and those who dared to resist were ruthlessly hunted. Yet even in the darkest hours, something remarkable began to unfold. The spark of rebellion that humanity had ignited was not limited to Earth. Across the galaxy, old enemies of the Dominion, alien species oppressed for centuries, began to stir. Factions long subdued by the Unthar began to break their silence, watching the humans and realizing something that had never occurred to them before. Humanity, despite its youth and frailty, was willing to defy the impossible. And that defiance had become contagious. In a secret meeting room on the moon of Klinder, hidden within a vast cave system beneath the frozen surface, Liana Armitage sat with a group of the most unlikely allies, representatives from species once considered enemies of Earth, all united by a common cause: the destruction of the Unthar Dominion. "Your species fought the Unthar in the last Galactic War, correct?" Liana asked, her voice steady as she addressed the representative from the tree, an insectoid race once driven to near extinction by the Dominion's expansionist agenda. Their carapace shimmered with iridescent patterns, a stark contrast to the war-torn faces of their delegation. The tree leader, High General Zal, inclined his head. "Yes. The Unthar came for us first, but they underestimated our resilience. We fought back, but in the end, the Dominion's fleet overwhelmed us. Our people are scattered across the far reaches of the galaxy now. Few of us remain. We're not asking for your people to fight a war they can't win alone," Liana replied. "We're asking for your help to finish what was started before they do the same to us." Zal's many eyes narrowed, but he said nothing at first. There was an uncomfortable silence in the room. Tension hung heavy as the representatives from several other species, Sari, Rylax, and even a few renegade Unthar defectors, watched the exchange carefully. "We can't face the Unthar without a solid strategy," Liana continued, her gaze shifting to the others around the table. "We need resources, reinforcements, and intelligence. You all know the Dominion's weaknesses better than anyone." The Sari ambassador, Tiralex, a sleek, feline-like humanoid with sharp, intelligent eyes, leaned forward. "The Unthar have a blind spot in their communications network. We can exploit it, take down their entire intelligence division in one swift strike. But it will require careful coordination, and we'll need ships. Your people have the technology to move quickly. I'm willing to work with you if your people can provide it. Liana nodded. We can do that. Humanity has resources and expertise in stealth technology. We'll share what we can, and together, we'll take down their communications grid. The mood in the room shifted, as if the weight of their shared purpose began to solidify the alliance. Zal spoke again, this time with a note of respect in his voice. We'll need more than just sabotage. If we are to fight back, we must hit them where it hurts, at the core. The Unthar have constructed several military fortresses around key trade routes. These fortresses are their lifeblood. Disrupting them will cripple their entire military network. Liana's mind raced. Disrupting the Unthar's core military infrastructure would be a massive blow, one that could buy them precious time. But it would also put them directly in the path of the Dominion's fury. A gamble, but one they had no choice but to take. How soon can you be ready? Liana asked, her tone firm. We've been preparing for this moment for a long time, Zal said. Give us 2 weeks, and we'll strike together. With the Trieste fleet pledged to the cause, and the Sari agreeing to assist with intelligence, the Resistance's plan began to take shape. The alliance was fragile, but it was the only hope humanity had left. And in those 2 weeks, Liana's team worked tirelessly to coordinate the attack, merging human stealth technology with the advanced tactics of the Tree and the Sari intelligence networks. On the eve of the strike, as the Resistance fleet assembled in the cold vacuum of space, Liana stood at the helm of the Aegis, her flagship. The mood was somber, the weight of the upcoming mission pressing down on her. Commander Kor stood at her side, his face grim but determined. We're about to make our move, Kor said, his eyes scanning the tactical readouts. This is the moment that could turn the tide. We need to hit them hard and fast. Liana nodded, her gaze fixed on the holographic map of the enemy fortresses. The battle ahead would be brutal. The Unthar would fight back with everything they had, but the Resistance was ready to strike at the heart of their empire. As the countdown began, Liana allowed herself a fleeting moment of doubt, but it was quickly replaced with a surge of determination. Humanity had fought against impossible odds before, and they had always found a way to survive. This time, they would do more than survive. They would make the Unthar fear them. They would prove to the galaxy that humanity was no longer the underdog. It was time to show the universe that humanity could change the course of history. The assault on the Unthar military fortresses had begun. The newly formed alliance of humanity, the Tree, and the Sari had come together in ways no one had predicted, pooling their technology, their resources, and their knowledge to strike a blow that would send shockwaves through the Dominion. Every ship in the Resistance fleet was prepared, every fighter, every bomber, and every cruiser, ready to take on the full might of the Unthar Empire. Liana Armitage stood at the bridge of the Aegis, her eyes fixed on the tactical map. The fortresses they were about to attack were the most heavily defended strongholds in the Unthar Empire. If they succeeded, it would cripple the Dominion's ability to project power across the galaxy. If they failed, it would likely mean the end of the human race. Commander Kor, Liana said, her voice unwavering. You're certain we can breach the outer defenses? Kor's eyes never left the battlefield display. We've planned for every contingency. The Trieste stealth technology should get us close enough to strike before the Unthar realize what's happening. Once we're inside their shields, it's all about timing. The fleet, a ragtag collection of ships from different species, moved like a living organism, flowing silently through space. A dozen Resistance ships, barely a fraction of what the Unthar could field, were about to launch the most dangerous raid in galactic history. All ships, report in, Kor commanded. The responses came in human, Tree, Sari, all preparing to face the challenge together. Every ship in the fleet had its own crucial role. The Tree ships would use their cloaking technology to breach the fortress's outer hulls, and the Sari intelligence systems would disrupt the Unthar's communication grid, cutting off their ability to coordinate a defense. Humanity's role was simple: strike fast, hit hard, and make sure the Unthar knew that the galaxy had awakened. As the Resistance fleet neared the first fortress, a massive structure suspended in the orbit of a dying star, the reality of the task ahead hit hard. The Unthar fortress loomed like a colossal shadow, an impenetrable fortress of steel and energy shields. To most, it would have seemed like a monument to the Dominion's unyielding strength, an insurmountable fortress that would be impossible to breach. But to the Resistance, it was a symbol of everything that needed to fall. Lyanna's thoughts flashed to the sacrifices already made, lives lost in the first skirmishes, colonies obliterated in Dominion strikes, and yet here they were, on the verge of the unthinkable. "Commander, we're in position," Lieutenant Takeda's voice crackled through the comms. "Ready to deploy the stealth squads." "Deploy," Corps commanded. "On my mark." There was a tense silence as the Resistance ships moved into position, their shields and cloaking devices engaged, their weapons primed. With a single, synchronized motion, the fleet surged forward, cloaking technology activating as they slipped through the unblinking sensors of the Unthar fortress. Mark. In an instant, the silence was shattered as energy pulses from the human ships struck the fortress's outer shields. The Unthar, caught off guard, scrambled to respond. But by the time their defense systems had reacted, the stealth ships had already done their job. The tree had pierced the fortress's outer defenses, breaching the hull with surgical precision. It was the beginning of the end for the Unthar. The next few hours were a blur of chaos. Resistance ships poured into the heart of the fortress, taking out key systems with ruthless efficiency. Explosions shook the structure, and hull breaches spread like wildfire. The Unthar commanders scrambled, trying to regain control, but their communications network was in disarray. The Sari cyber attack was devastating, rendering the Unthar commanders unable to coordinate their efforts, each ship left to fight on its own. Lyanna watched from the bridge, her pulse racing. Every part of her body screamed that this was it. This was the moment that would define the future of the galaxy. "Targets locked," Takeda called. "We're in position to strike the reactor." "Do it," Lyanna replied, her voice hard. "Take the heart out." A sudden, violent tremor rocked the Aegis as the human fleet delivered the final blow. Explosions erupted throughout the fortress, shaking it to its very foundations. The reactor core detonated with a massive shockwave that lit up the void in a brilliant flash of light. For a brief moment, it seemed as though time itself had stopped. The fortress was no more. The relief was immediate, but short-lived. As the fleet pulled away from the wreckage, the alarm systems began to blare. The Unthar weren't done yet. A fleet of reinforcements had arrived. "We've been spotted," Kor's voice cut through the chaos. "The Dominion knows we're here now. They're coming in full force." Lyanna's heart raced. The mission had been a success, but it had come at a price. The Unthar would retaliate with everything they had. "All ships, fall back," Kor ordered. "We've done what we came for. Let's get out of here." The Resistance fleet scrambled to regroup, but the Unthar fleet was massive, their ships swarming like a nest of angry hornets. The battle to escape the fortress system became a frantic, desperate struggle. Despite the chaos, Lyanna's resolve never wavered. Humanity had done the impossible. They had struck at the heart of the Dominion, and now they were leaving a mark that would never be erased. As the Resistance ships jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of the Unthar fortress, Lyanna took a deep breath, her fingers trembling on the console. "Get ready for the next phase," she muttered under her breath. This is just the beginning. The victory at the Unthar fortress was bittersweet. Humanity, alongside their unlikely allies, had struck a blow to the heart of the Dominion, but the cost of the operation had been enormous. Many ships had been lost, and though the Dominion's military infrastructure had been severely damaged, they were far from defeated. The Unthar Empire was vast, and now they were enraged. In the aftermath of the attack, Lyanna Armitage found herself standing before a holographic map in the war room of Earth's underground command center. The map flickered with images of the galaxy, focusing on the remnants of the Unthar fortress, now a glowing heap of debris. The strategic victory was clear, but it had come at a cost they could not afford to ignore. A massive Dominion fleet was already on its way to Earth. "Commander Kor," Liana began, her voice measured but heavy with the weight of their situation. "We need to prepare for a counterattack. The Unthar are coming in full force." Kor's face was a mask of grim determination. He had seen his fair share of battles, but this was something else. The enemy was relentless, and the Resistance's strength was starting to dwindle. "They're sending everything they have. If we can't get reinforcements, we'll be facing their entire military." Liana nodded. "We need to buy time, enough for the rest of the Alliance to mobilize. We've pushed them to the edge, but now we need to finish this. If we don't stop them here, Earth will fall." The room fell silent as they absorbed the gravity of the situation. The Earth Defense Fleet was still scattered after the earlier skirmishes, and the enemy fleet was far larger. Despite their successes, humanity's forces were still outgunned, and their ships were barely holding together after the last few engagements. Suddenly, the hologram flickered and shifted to an incoming communication. Liana's heart skipped a beat when she saw the familiar face of Tyralex, the Sari ambassador, their sharp feline eyes glowing with a mix of concern and resolve. "Ambassador," Liana said, immediately stepping forward. "What news?" Tyralex's voice was steady, though her tone betrayed a sense of urgency. "The Tree have agreed to assist with one final push. We're sending our remaining ships and stealth forces to distract the Dominion fleet, giving you enough time to launch a full-scale counteroffensive. But the window is narrow. The Dominion is already assembling reinforcements from their outer systems. If we don't act fast, it will be too late." Liana felt a surge of hope. The Tree's cloaking technology and the Sari's cyberwarfare expertise could give them the edge they needed. But they had to act now. "How long do we have?" "Less than 20 hours, Tyralex replied. "The Dominion is already aware of the weakness in their command structure. They will not hesitate to strike Earth directly. You need to make your move quickly." Liana turned to Kor. "We won't have much time to prepare. The Unthar will be coming in force. We need every ship ready for battle." Kor nodded, his gaze steely. "I'll get the fleet moving." Liana turned back to the hologram. "Tell the rest of the Alliance to prepare for battle. We'll make our stand on Earth." With that, the room erupted into a flurry of activity. The Resistance scrambled to ready their forces, mobilizing what little they had left. It was an all-or-nothing moment. There was no more room for failure. As the hours ticked down, Earth's defenses were fortified. Planetary shields were brought to full strength, and every available ship was armed and stationed. The massive Dominion fleet was inbound, their ships like a cloud of death bearing down on Earth's atmosphere. Liana knew the Dominion wouldn't waste time with negotiations. They would strike swiftly, ruthlessly. It was the Resistance's last stand. When the Unthar fleet finally arrived, it filled the skies of Earth like a storm front. Massive dreadnoughts, carriers, and assault ships blotted out the stars. The Dominion was here to make an example of humanity. Liana stood once more on the bridge of the Aegis, staring into the void where the enemy fleet had appeared. Commander Kor was by her side, his gaze fixed on the enemy formations. "They won't give us mercy," Liana said, her voice cold with resolve. "We need to hit them before they can unleash everything." The battle was about to begin. Without warning, the Resistance fleet launched. Tree ships darted in from the shadows, cloaking devices flickering as they assaulted the Dominion's rear lines. The Sari's cyberwarfare units disabled communications across the enemy fleet, creating chaos and confusion. The Resistance ships, though outnumbered, swarmed like bees defending their hive, launching coordinated strikes against the massive Unthar warships. The sky above Earth erupted in fire and plasma as the battle intensified. Resistance ships weaved through enemy fire, using every ounce of human ingenuity and alien technology at their disposal. Despite their best efforts, the Dominion fleet was a juggernaut, and its sheer firepower began to wear down the Resistance forces. Each explosion, each ship lost, sent ripples of despair through humanity's heart, but the fight was far from over. Liana's voice crackled through the comms, steady and unwavering. "We're not giving up. This is our home, and we're fighting for it." But the tide of battle was shifting. The Dominion fleet was beginning to break through, its heavy dreadnoughts pushing toward Earth's orbital defenses. And then, just as it seemed the Resistance would falter, a message crackled through the comms. It was from the Unthar's flagship, a massive battleship at the head of the fleet. Humanity, the voice on the other end boomed, deep and threatening. Your resistance is futile. Your destruction is inevitable. Lyanna's eyes narrowed as she gazed at the flagship on the holoscreen. Not if we can help it. It was time to end this. The final gamble had to be made. Lyanna ordered the fleet to converge on the Unthar flagship. Every ship, every fighter, poured into the assault. The moment of truth was upon them. And then, just as the Dominion flagship prepared to fire its planet-destroying weapon, humanity's most daring maneuver was launched. A human strike force led by Kor himself broke through the enemy defenses, making a desperate, suicidal charge toward the flagship. Weapons discharged, the Aegis and its allies dove into the heart of the Unthar flagship's shields, a gamble that would determine the fate of humanity. The final battle had reached its crescendo. Humanity's resistance, battered but unbroken, had thrust itself into the very heart of the Dominion's war machine. Earth's future hung in the balance, and the fate of the galaxy seemed to rest on a knife's edge. The Unthar flagship, a colossal ship known as Devastator, loomed in the center of the battlefield, its weapon systems charged and ready. A single strike from this ship could wipe Earth from existence, erasing humanity and its dreams of freedom. But the Resistance had one final play, a desperate, high-risk maneuver that would either end the war in victory or spell humanity's annihilation. Lyanna Armitage stood at the bridge of the Aegis, her hands gripping the control panel. Around her, the crew was tense but resolute. Commander Kor was beside her, his face grim, but there was a fire in his eyes that spoke of a determination stronger than any fear. "We're making our move," Lyanna said, her voice steady despite the pressure. "Our only shot at winning this is taking out that flagship. If we don't stop it, Earth is done for." Kor nodded, his jaw clenched. "The Devastator is almost fully charged. We've got one shot at this." All around them, the battle raged. The skies above Earth were filled with the sounds of destruction as the Dominion fleet clashed with the combined forces of humanity, the Tree and the Sari. The enemy's firepower was overwhelming, but the Resistance fought with everything they had, pushing back with every ounce of strength. The plan was simple yet insane: break through the Dominion's lines and make a direct assault on the Devastator. The rest of the fleet would provide cover while the strike force, led by Kor himself, made their way to the heart of the enemy ship. With Tree stealth ships and Sari electronic warfare, the Resistance had a slim chance of breaching the flagship's defenses. But if they succeeded, they would have one last chance to disable the ship's weapon systems and bring the Dominion to its knees. The countdown began. "We're within range," Kor called out as the Aegis and the strike fleet neared the massive Unthar ship. The Dominion fleet was closing in on Earth's final defenses, and the incoming fire was relentless. Lyanna felt her heartbeat in her throat. The stakes couldn't be higher. Every choice, every movement, had led to this moment. There was no turning back now. She turned to Kor. "Let's finish this." In a calculated, synchronized move, the Resistance forces surged forward. Tree ships, cloaked in their near invisibility, slipped past the enemy lines, launching their attack on the Devastator's outer defenses. The Sari cyber warfare unit, working in tandem with the human ships, scrambled the Dominion's communications and targeting systems, throwing their forces into disarray. The Aegis and its allies flew at breakneck speed, dodging incoming fire and weaving through the chaos of battle. The Unthar flagship fired relentlessly, beams of energy erupting from its hull in every direction, but the Resistance fighters danced around the blasts, expertly weaving through the onslaught. The heart-pounding moment arrived. The Aegis and Kor's strike force broke through the Unthar defenses, entering the flagship's inner sanctum. The bridge of the Aegis shook violently as they were hit by retaliatory fire, but Lyanna held her ground, her resolve as firm as steel. "We're in." Kor's voice echoed over the comms. "Prepare for final strike." Inside the Devastator, the resistance team stormed the corridors, cutting down Unthar soldiers with lethal precision. The atmosphere was charged with the energy of impending victory, or devastating failure. The clock was ticking. Every moment they delayed brought Earth closer to annihilation. Finally, they reached the heart of the Devastator, the reactor chamber. Massive conduits of raw energy crackled around them, and the overwhelming power of the flagship's weapon system loomed over them like a death sentence. "Plant the charges," Kor barked, his voice sharp. Liana's team moved quickly, setting the explosive devices on the main reactor core. But just as they finished, the ship's automated defense systems sprang to life. The air hummed with energy as a dozen Unthar elite guards appeared, weapons drawn and ready to fire. Liana's heart raced. They had no time to fight. The charges had to be activated, or the mission would be a failure. "Cover me," she shouted. Kor and the others engaged the guards, buying Liana the precious seconds she needed. She sprinted toward the control panel, slamming her hand onto the activation switch. The countdown began.
"Get out of there, now," Kor yelled.
But the explosion was inevitable. They had triggered the charges. The Devastator's reactor would soon go critical. The team scrambled back toward the exit as the ship began to shake violently, the explosion already building inside. They fought their way out through the corridors, the ship groaning under the strain of the impending cataclysm. The Aegis was waiting for them, its engines primed for escape. As they boarded the ship, Liana's eyes locked with Kor's. There was no need for words. They had done it. They had stopped the Unthar. The Devastator exploded in a blinding flash of light, and with it, the heart of the Unthar fleet was torn apart. The shockwave rippled through space, sending enemy ships scattering in disarray. The Dominion's command structure had been shattered. The Resistance had dealt the final blow. As the Aegis jumped into hyperspace, leaving the destruction behind them, Liana allowed herself a breath of relief. The battle was over. The Unthar had been defeated. But Earth's fight wasn't over. The galaxy had changed forever, and humanity had shown that it was no longer a helpless species to be dominated. They had risen against the odds, and in doing so, they had ignited a flame that would spread across the stars. And humanity had only just begun to chart its own destiny.